The Galactic Council chamber was filled with the faint hum of dignitaries whispering among themselves. It was an impressive array of species, most with more tentacles than a sushi buffet, each radiating self-importance like it was their birthright. At the head of the chamber, the Supreme Overlord, or as the humans would later call him, Squishy McTentacles raised a slimy appendage for silence. "We are here to discuss." The humans, he said it, as if the word tasted bad. Kind of like anchovies, or the time they tried adding kale to space rations. A murmur rippled through the gathered aliens. The humans had been a minor annoyance up until now, a bunch of primitives with no understanding of the wider galaxy. Until one of the exploration teams got a little too close to Earth's atmosphere and their craft was knocked out of the sky. Was it some advanced military weapon? An antimatter cannon asked one of the higher-ranking military officials, his voice dripping with curiosity and a little disdain. The Overlord hesitated, a ripple of discomfort moving across his gelatinous form. No, it was a toaster. Silence. If a room full of squishy, floaty, and multi-limbed aliens could drop their jaws, this was the moment they'd do it. A toaster, repeated one of the diplomats, blinking several pairs of eyes in confusion. You mean like, for bread? Exactly. Several in the room seemed to struggle with this, not because they didn't understand the concept of bread, but because the implications of defeating a spaceship with kitchen appliances were, frankly, mortifying. The Overlord pressed on, clearly uncomfortable. The humans are resourceful. They turned it into an electromagnetic pulse device. Cue another murmur, this one more uneasy than before. After all, what else could these resourceful creatures do with their junk? Is there? More of this came, a timid question from the crowd. It was more of a plea, honestly. The Overlord sighed. Unfortunately, yes, one of our scouting parties reported that humans have turned discarded aluminum cans into a rudimentary, but highly effective, explosive device. Another report mentions a group of them using an old refrigerator as a makeshift bunker that withstood one of our orbital strikes. Another alien piped up, his voice shaky. I saw a report about a child's toy, a teddy bear, laced with explosives. A collective gasp filled the room. Yes, the Overlord said, looking even more defeated than when the Galactic Senate banned caffeine from the council chambers. They appear to repurpose their trash into weapons at an alarming rate. On Earth, things were much more relaxed. At least they were for Todd, who had just attached a coffee maker to a battery and was now casually explaining the mechanics of his latest invention to his wife Clara, who was sipping her third margarita. Wait, so you're telling me that this thing, Clara gestured with her drink, ice clinking against the glass, this coffee maker can now create EMPs? Yep, Todd said, not looking up from the wires he was fiddling with. Pretty neat, huh? Clara sighed, taking a long sip. You're going to piss off those aliens again, aren't you? Todd shrugged. Maybe, but honestly, they started it. We're just trying to keep things interesting. Interesting was one way to put it. Hysterically confusing was probably closer to the truth, but she let him have this one. After all, she liked her margaritas, and it didn't seem like the aliens could do much to stop them. Not when Todd had figured out how to make a tank out of an old Ford pickup and some garden tools. Back on the Galactic Council ship, the mood had shifted from concern to full-blown panic. One after another, reports streamed in about human innovations that ranged from the bizarre to the outright terrifying. They used bottle caps to create a mini-nuke, one alien screeched. They've weaponized rubber bands, another cried. They've even turned marshmallow fluff into some sort of adhesive that can seal our starship hangars. The Overlord slumped in his seat, looking utterly defeated. What are we dealing with? Are they some kind of advanced species masquerading as idiots? No, said one of the council members, her voice trembling. They're just idiots who happen to be really, really dangerous. Back on Earth, Todd's neighbor, Bob, was leaning over the fence. Hey Todd, you got a minute? I've got this old microwave I was thinking of strapping to my roof. You know, in case the aliens come back. Todd looked up, grinning. Sure thing, Bob. Just remember to ground it. Don't want another repeat of the toaster incident. Bob laughed. Nah, I'm going for something bigger this time. Thinking maybe we could rig up a catapult with all those broken office chairs you've got lying around. Todd squinted, considering the idea. That actually might work. And so, While the aliens scrambled to decipher how an inferior species could so consistently outmaneuver them, humanity continued on blissfully unaware, half-drunk, and very, very dangerous. Because if there's one thing the Galactic Council hadn't counted on, it was this: humanity didn't need fancy technology. They had ingenuity. And a whole lot of junk. And, as Todd would say, sometimes junk's all you need to win a war. The Galactic Council, now on the verge of a collective nervous breakdown, convened an emergency session. It had become abundantly clear that their passive approach, observing from a safe distance, was no longer tenable. Action had to be taken. "We need a plan," the Overlord declared, his voice losing its usual regal authority and slipping into the realm of frantic desperation. His many tentacles writhed, betraying his barely contained panic. "We cannot allow these humans to continue weaponizing everything." An alien diplomat, resembling a sentient blob of iridescent goo, tentatively raised a pseudopod. "May I suggest diplomacy?" The room went silent, and all eyes turned toward the blob. It shrank slightly under the weight of their stares. "Diplomacy?" With them, one general snarled. "Did you see what they did with the waffle iron? How are we supposed to negotiate with creatures who think it's a great idea to combine kitchen appliances and military strategy?" The blob sputtered. "But perhaps we could appeal to their reason," the Overlord echoed incredulously. "I'm not even sure they have a functioning concept of reason. They turned an old washing machine into what was it? A particle destabilizer." "That one was impressive." "To be fair," another alien murmured, earning a stern glare from the Overlord. Enough, the Overlord slammed a tentacle down on the table, which made a sad, wet slap sound rather than the commanding thud he'd hoped for. "We're launching a tactical team. This ends now." Meanwhile, on Earth, Todd was lounging in his backyard, admiring his latest creation. Clara, ever the voice of reason, or at least the voice of lesser insanity, stood by with her arms crossed, watching him with a mixture of amusement and exasperation. "So," Clara said, sipping another margarita, she was on a roll today, "you've built a giant slingshot out of bungee cords and some of the kids' old swing set. What's the plan here? Hurl a couple of rocks at the aliens?" Todd grinned. "Nah, not rocks." He patted the enormous sling, now loaded with what looked like a rusty old refrigerator door. "I figured we'd go for something with a little more oomph. This baby's going to fly straight into their command ship if they come too close again." Clara raised an eyebrow. "You're sure this is a good idea?" "Good idea? Nah. Fun idea?" "Absolutely." Up in orbit, the tactical team from the Galactic Council's elite forces had just arrived in Earth's airspace. The ship's captain, an imposing figure covered in dark, iridescent armor, surveyed the blue-green planet below with thinly veiled disgust. "I don't care what kind of junk these humans have rigged together," he sneered, his voice cold and mechanical through his translator. "Our technology is far superior. We'll wipe them out in a matter of moments." The ship descended, cloaked in state-of-the-art stealth technology. As far as the captain was concerned, this was a simple extraction mission: find the human responsible for the chaos, eliminate the threat, and be back in time for space brunch. Easy. Unfortunately, the humans had other plans. Todd and Bob were standing on the lawn, gazing up at the sky. The makeshift slingshot was primed, loaded with its absurdly oversized projectile, and aimed roughly in the direction of space. They didn't actually know if the aliens were out there, but hey, better safe than sorry. "Ready to fire?" Bob asked, scratching his head. His nervous energy was the perfect contrast to Todd's absolute nonchalance. Todd squinted up at the sky. "Yup, I think I saw a glint of something up there. That could be a star. Or it could be a ship about to get refrigerator-doored." Todd gave Bob a thumbs up and pulled the lever. With a loud twang and a whoosh of air, the refrigerator door hurtled skyward at an alarming speed. The two men watched it disappear into the clouds. "How long until we know if we hit something?" Bob asked, genuinely curious. Todd shrugged. "No idea. I guess we'll hear a crash or something." On board the alien ship, the tactical team was just beginning to descend when their cloaking system detected an object hurtling toward them. The captain blinked, checking the sensors. "What is that?" one of his officers asked, staring at the screen in confusion. The captain leaned in, scrutinizing the data. "It appears to be metal, moving at an extremely high velocity." Metal. The officer's confusion deepened. "What kind of weapon?" Before he could finish the sentence, the object slammed into the side of the ship with the force of an asteroid. The entire craft shuddered violently as systems went haywire. Sparks flew from the control panels, and alarms blared throughout the ship. "What hit us?" the captain roared, trying to regain control of the ship's rapidly failing systems. So the officer said, disbelief in his voice, "It appears we've been struck by a refrigerator door." The captain stared at him, his mind struggling to process the absurdity of the situation. A refrigerator door. "Yes, sir." The ship careened out of control, spinning wildly as it lost altitude. Within moments, the sleek, state-of-the-art alien craft plummeted toward the Earth's surface, its cloaking technology flickering out as it fell. Somewhere in the distance, Todd and Bob heard a distant crash. Bob's eyes widened. "Did we just?" Todd grinned. "Yup, we sure did." Back on the alien command ship, the Overlord watched in stunned silence as reports of the crash poured in. His tactical team, the best in the galaxy, had been defeated by an old appliance. He rubbed his temples with a tentacle, feeling a migraine of epic proportions coming on. "This can't be happening," he muttered. "These humans, they're an enigma wrapped in trash." One of his advisors shuffled nervously next to him. "Sir, perhaps we should reconsider our approach. It seems conventional methods aren't working." The Overlord sighed deeply. "No, we just need to be smarter. If we can't outfight them, we'll outthink them." There was a pause. "How exactly do you propose we outthink a species that apparently uses garbage as artillery?" the advisor asked hesitantly. The Overlord didn't answer right away. His eyes narrowed as he stared at the holographic map of Earth, his mind racing. If brute force couldn't win the day, maybe subtlety could. Maybe. He took a deep breath. "We'll send in a sleeper agent." In the vast, dimly lit halls of the Galactic Command ship, the Overlord's advisors gathered around a holographic display of Earth. A single figure stood apart from the group, their tall, slender form cloaked in shadow. This was Unit Z-19, one of the galaxy's most elite operatives, renowned for their ability to blend into any species, any environment, undetected. "You understand your mission?" the Overlord asked, his voice a quiet ripple in the otherwise tense silence. Unit Z-19 nodded, their voice smooth and emotionless. "Infiltrate, gather intelligence, and neutralize the human threat." The Overlord leaned closer. "And remember, this species is unpredictable. They turn the most mundane objects into deadly weapons. Exercise caution." Z-19's eyes glowed faintly under the hood. "They are primitives. They will not suspect a thing." The Overlord nodded but looked unconvinced. "Just stay away from any kitchen appliances." Earth, as it turned out, was not quite what Z-19 had expected. The operative, now cloaked in a human disguise, wandered the streets of a small town, their confusion mounting with every passing second. This was supposed to be a mission of stealth and precision, but nothing about the humans' behavior made any sense. For starters, why was there so much garbage? Everywhere Z-19 looked, humans were surrounded by trash piles of it, scattered across the streets, in their homes, even in the places where they purchased food. And yet, the humans seemed utterly unbothered by the filth, even incorporating it into their daily lives in bizarre and disturbing ways. As Z-19 stood on a street corner, observing a group of children fashioning what appeared to be some kind of weapon out of soda cans and rubber bands, they couldn't help but feel a flicker of concern. "They're building a tactical device," Z-19 muttered under their breath. Out of refuse. "Hey buddy, you okay?" a voice interrupted their thoughts. Z-19 turned to see a scruffy-looking man in a faded t-shirt and jeans, another primitive, no doubt, but perhaps useful for gathering information. "I'm fine," Z-19 replied, mimicking what they assumed to be human conversational norms. The man, whose name tag identified him as Dave, looked Z-19 up and down with a bemused expression. "You lost or something? You've been standing here talking to yourself for like 5 minutes. "I'm gathering data," Z-19 said, trying to remain vague. Dave raised an eyebrow. "Right. Well, just be careful around here. Last time someone stood in one place for too long, Todd down the street mistook them for a security camera and tried to rig in to his latest project." Z-19 blinked. "Project? Yeah, you know, his anti-alien defense system. Dude's got all sorts of junk strapped to the roof of his garage. No clue if it works, but it sure looks like a fire hazard. Z-19 stared at Dave, trying to process this information. Anti-alien defense. Dave shrugged. Yeah, he's been paranoid about aliens ever since that UFO thing last month. Figured he might as well prepare, just in case. The alien operative felt a strange sinking sensation. What exactly has he prepared? Dave grinned. Oh, you know, the usual. Old microwaves, car batteries, a bunch of junkyard scraps. He's convinced that if aliens show up, they'll never see it coming. Z-19's concern deepened. Were these humans more aware of the alien presence than the Galactic Council had thought? The operative made a mental note to investigate this Todd character and his defense system. Thank you for the information, Dave Z-19 said, trying to exit the conversation as naturally as possible. No problem, man, Dave said, still eyeing Z-19 with suspicion. Just watch your back. Todd's not the only one around here with weird ideas. You look at someone funny, and you'll end up duct taped to a lawnmower in no time. Z-19 cautiously approached Todd's house later that day, hiding in the shadows as they surveyed the chaotic array of makeshift weaponry scattered across the lawn. Sure enough, there was a collection of old microwaves stacked like a fortress, along with what appeared to be an outboard motor strapped to a lawn chair. Primitive yet unsettlingly effective, Z-19 muttered. Suddenly there was a click behind them. Hold it right there, buddy. Z-19 froze. Slowly they turned around to find Todd standing in the driveway, holding what looked like a leaf blower. But Z-19's keen senses detected that this was no ordinary gardening tool. Todd had modified it, somehow. The alien operative's mind raced, trying to calculate what kind of weapon it could be. You lost or something? Todd asked, narrowing his eyes. Z-19's human disguise was flawless, but Todd's suspicions were clearly aroused. The alien had to think quickly. I was just admiring your creations, Z-19 said, nodding toward the pile of scrap. Impressive, Todd beamed. Thanks. Been working on this for months. You know, just in case of unforeseen visitors. Visitors, Z-19's voice remained steady, but their mind was spinning. Could this human truly be aware of the alien threat? Yeah, you know aliens. I figure, if they show up, we'll be ready. I got MP generators, a catapult rigged with paint cans, even turned my old fridge into a bunker. Todd gestured proudly toward the refrigerator door, now resting like a trophy on the lawn. I figured if we can't beat M with tech, we can at least annoy the hell out of them. Z-19 blinked. You intend to fight aliens with a refrigerator? Todd grinned. Damn straight. Worked the last time, didn't it? The alien operative could feel their confidence slipping. This human was either a genius or a lunatic or, more disturbingly, both. Well, Z-19 said, backing away slowly, good luck with your preparations. Todd squinted at Z-19, clearly still suspicious. You sure you're not from around here? You got a weird vibe, man. Z-19 forced a laugh, something they had learned from observing human behavior. Just a visitor passing through. As the operative turned to leave, Todd called after them. Hey, if you're ever interested in building some real alien-proof tech, let me know. Could always use an extra pair of hands. Or, you know, tentacles. Z-19 froze for a split second before hurrying away, their mind buzzing with disbelief. These humans, were they truly aware of the alien presence, or were they simply too stupid to realize the absurdity of their actions? Either way, the mission was becoming far more complicated than anticipated. Later that night, Z-19 sat in their temporary hideout, trying to make sense of the day's events. The humans were not what they seemed. Despite their primitive technology and chaotic society, they had somehow managed to survive not only through sheer luck but through an uncanny ability to weaponize their own environment. The operative sighed, running a hand through their human-disguised hair. The Overlord wasn't going to like this report. Meanwhile, back on the Galactic Command ship, the Overlord waited impatiently for word from Z-19. The silence was deafening. Perhaps we should have just bombarded the planet from orbit, one of the advisors muttered, earning a stern glare from the Overlord. We'll hear from the operative soon, the Overlord said, more to reassure himself than anyone else. Or another advisor raised a tentacle. But what if? The humans have already found the agent. What if they've repurposed them? The Overlord paled. Repurposed? You mean like they did with that toaster? Exactly, the advisor said gravely. What if the humans have weaponized our agent? Z-19 sat in their dingy, temporary hideout, a small, cluttered apartment that reeked of what humans called takeout food. The pile of boxes in the corner seemed to be multiplying, and though Z-19 didn't fully understand what General Tissot's chicken was, they knew the smell was starting to mess with their enhanced olfactory system. They tapped the small communication device embedded in their wrist, opening a secure channel to the galactic command ship. Unit Z-19 reporting, Z-19 said, keeping their voice low. Infiltration complete. However, I must report complications. The Overlord's voice crackled through the device, filled with frustration. Complications? How can there be complications? You're infiltrating primitives. Z-19 exhaled, their human lungs still unfamiliar. These humans are not behaving as expected. Their society is chaotic. They have turned refuse into weapons and seem to be aware of our presence. Their technological prowess is minimal, yet they have successfully thwarted our efforts using trash. Trash, the Overlord hissed, clearly disgusted. How are they using trash to defeat our forces? Z-19 glanced out the grimy window, watching a group of teenagers in the alley below constructing what looked like a makeshift flamethrower out of a super soaker. And still gathering data, but they seem to possess an innate ability to weaponize everyday objects. Their strategies are unpredictable. They do not think like us. The Overlord was silent for a moment, likely digesting this bizarre turn of events. Then you must adapt, infiltrate deeper, understand their methods. You are our best operative, this should not be beyond you. Z-19 stifled the urge to roll their human eyes, an irritating reflex that had come with their disguise. Understood. I will continue my investigation. They ended the transmission, feeling more uncertain than ever. Nothing about this mission was going according to plan. The next day, Z-19 found themselves back at Todd's house, standing awkwardly in the driveway while Todd fiddled with yet another bizarre contraption. This time, he'd strapped a series of old vacuum cleaners to the roof of his car, rigging them together with duct tape and what appeared to be copper wiring. Okay, Todd said, stepping back to admire his handiwork. So, this baby should be able to generate enough suction to pull any alien spaceship out of the sky. Or, clean the lawn. Either way, it's a win. Z-19 stared at the contraption, their human disguise preventing them from fully conveying the sheer disbelief they felt. You're using vacuums to bring down an alien ship? Todd grinned. Yep. Thought it was a pretty clever use of old tech, don't you think? Z-19 hesitated. I'm not sure that's how vacuums work. Todd shrugged, completely unconcerned. We'll figure it out in the field. Worst case, it blows up, and we use the pieces to build something else. The alien operative was beginning to realize that humans, despite their apparent madness, had a strange kind of logic to their chaos. If something didn't work, they simply turned it into something else, often something even more dangerous. So, you want to help test it out? Todd asked, handing Z-19 a remote control with a few suspicious-looking buttons. Z-19 took the remote, feeling their mission slip further and further into absurdity. What exactly am I controlling? Todd pointed at the vacuums, which were now humming ominously. Just hit the green button. That one's for max power. Z-19 pressed the button. Instantly, the vacuums roared to life, creating a low-pitched whine as they began to vibrate. The car shook slightly as the suction force ramped up, and Z-19 watched in a mixture of horror and fascination as loose objects, leaves, soda cans, an entire lawn chair, was sucked toward the vacuums and stuck to the roof of the car. Todd whooped in excitement. Look at that. It's working. If an alien ship gets close enough, it's toast. Z-19 stared at the mess of objects now plastered to the car. And if it doesn't work? Todd scratched his head. Well, in that case, I guess we just throw more junk at M until something sticks. The operative blinked. This is your plan? Todd shrugged again, completely unbothered. Hey, it worked with the refrigerator door, didn't it? Z-19 had no response to that. After all, he wasn't wrong. Back on the Galactic Command ship, the Overlord's patience was wearing thin. Another report had come in, this one detailing how yet another reconnaissance ship had been taken down. The cause? A catapulted lawnmower. They're savages, one of the advisors moaned. They've turned their gardening equipment into anti-aircraft artillery. The Overlord's tentacles twitched with barely contained rage. We must escalate. If these humans are truly capable of such reckless destruction, we need to respond with full force. No more subtlety. But so one of the junior commanders hesitated. What if they repurpose our technology? They've already demonstrated an ability to adapt to anything we throw at them. The overlord was silent, the weight of the situation sinking in. He loathed the idea, but there was only one option left. We will send the destroyer. A collective gasp filled the chamber. The destroyer was a last resort weapon, a massive, planet-crushing behemoth designed to wipe out entire civilizations. It was the Galactic Council's most feared weapon, and deploying it was a declaration of total war. But Sir, another advisor piped up, the destroyer is indiscriminate. It will destroy everything, including their precious trash. Exactly, the Overlord said, his voice cold and final. We will rid the galaxy of their chaotic influence once and for all. On Earth, Z-19 had just finished helping Todd dismantle a broken lawnmower when a low rumble shook the ground. Both of them looked up, and far in the distance, a massive shadow began to creep across the sky. It was so large, it seemed to blot out the sun itself. Todd squinted, his hand shielding his eyes. What the hell is that? Z-19's heart, or at least, the human approximation of it sank. They knew exactly what it was. That is the destroyer. Todd frowned. The destroyer? Sounds like a bad movie title. What does it do? It destroys planets, Z-19 said flatly, already calculating how much time they had before the massive weapon reached their town. Todd's eyes widened. Well, that sounds bad. Yes, Z-19 agreed. Very bad. For a moment, they both stood there, staring up at the sky in silence. Then Todd's face broke into a grin. Guess we're gonna need more vacuums. As the shadow of the destroyer stretched across the sky, blotting out the sun, Todd and Z-19 stood in the driveway, staring up at the massive weapon. The air had a strange, charged quality to it, like the calm before a storm, though Todd didn't seem particularly concerned. We're gonna need some more junk, Todd said casually, cracking his knuckles as if he were preparing for nothing more than a weekend garage sale. Z-19's eyes flicked between Todd and the approaching alien behemoth. More junk? That thing is designed to destroy entire planets. It's not some scouting ship or reconnaissance drone. It's the destroyer. Todd shrugged, as if planet-destroying weapons were just a minor inconvenience. Yeah, well, it's not like we've got anything else to work with, do we? Bob, Todd's ever-faithful neighbor, came jogging up the driveway, completely out of breath. He doubled over, panting. Todd, did you? Yeah, Bob, Todd said, grinning. Biggest UFO we've seen yet. Think we've got enough lawn mowers and vacuum cleaners to bring it down? Bob's face lit up with excitement. Hell yeah, we do. I've got a couple of old chainsaws we can rig to the roof if you want to go full Mad Max on this thing. Z-19 couldn't help but groan internally. This is your plan? Old chainsaws and vacuums. You do realize that even if you manage to launch these at the destroyer, it won't. Todd waved a hand dismissively. Relax, Z. You gotta have a little faith in human ingenuity. Z-19 looked at Todd, baffled by his casual confidence. Faith? In this, they gestured toward the pile of broken appliances, rusty car parts, and what appeared to be an inflatable pool floaty. Todd grinned and gave a thumbs up. Yep, that, my friend, is the power of trash. Z-19 resisted the urge to tear their human disguise off in sheer frustration. They had infiltrated hundreds of species, studied some of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy, and yet here they were, standing in a driveway full of junk, preparing to fight the most dangerous weapon known to their people with lawnmowers. Up in orbit, the destroyer loomed closer. The Galactic Council's best minds had designed the weapon to be unstoppable. It was equipped with enough firepower to obliterate planets, moons, and any debris in its path. And it had never been defeated. Not once, inside the command center, the Overlord watched with grim satisfaction as the massive weapon began to power up, its primary cannon glowing ominously as it aimed toward Earth. Prepare for full planetary annihilation, the Overlord commanded. The humans have proven too dangerous to leave unchecked. We'll wipe them out, and their refuse along with them. Sir, one of the officers said hesitantly, we're detecting some activity on the planet's surface. Activity, the Overlord frowned. What kind of activity? The officer zoomed in on the sensor readings, and sure enough, Several large objects were moving rapidly across the surface, converging near the site where one of their reconnaissance ships had been downed. It appears the humans are mobilizing some sort of response. The Overlord's eyes narrowed. What kind of response? It's difficult to say, sir, the officer said, confusion evident in their voice. It appears to involve household appliances and perhaps a lawnmower. For a moment, the Overlord simply stared at the officer, wondering if he had heard correctly. A lawnmower. Yes, sir. And possibly garden hoses. The Overlord rubbed his temples with a tentacle, feeling the onset of another migraine. This species is infuriating. Prepare to fire on my command. Back on Earth, Todd had rallied the neighbors, and the street was now bustling with activity. People were dragging out old refrigerators, car batteries, and anything else that could be cobbled together into makeshift defenses. It looked less like a military operation and more like the world's weirdest yard sale. C-19 watched in disbelief as Bob rigged a set of old Christmas lights to a remote-control drone. What exactly are you doing? Bob grinned. Electromagnetic disruption. I figured if we can fly this thing close enough to the destroyer, the lights will short out their targeting systems. Z-19 stared at him. With Christmas lights? Bob nodded proudly. Yep. These babies haven't worked since 2012, but they still pack a punch. The alien operative pinched the bridge of their nose. You do realize how ridiculous this sounds. Bob shrugged. Hey, it's either this or nothing, right? As much as Z-19 wanted to argue, they couldn't deny that the humans had an odd kind of resilience. There was no logic to their methods, no precision. And yet, they had somehow managed to keep the Galactic Council at bay longer than any other species in recorded history. Perhaps there was something to their madness after all. The destroyer continued its slow, menacing approach, now casting an even darker shadow over the town. The air hummed with tension as its massive weaponry powered up, ready to unleash unimaginable destruction. Todd, standing at the center of their makeshift defense zone, wiped his hands on his jeans and surveyed the scene with a satisfied nod. All right, folks, this is it. We've got vacuums, microwaves, and enough duct tape to hold a battleship together. Let's show these aliens what we're made of. Z-19 looked up at the looming weapon in the sky, and then back at the chaotic mess of junk around them. This is insane, they muttered. This is beyond insane. Todd grinned, slapping Z-19 on the back. Welcome to Earth, buddy. We thrive on insane. Inside the destroyer, the Overlord watched as the weapon's main cannon charged to full capacity, its energy signature spiking on the monitors. Prepare to fire, he ordered, his voice dripping with finality. But just as the command was about to be given, a warning light flashed on the console. So one of the officers shouted, "We're detecting a large object approaching the ship at high velocity." The Overlord's eyes widened. What is it? The officer squinted at the readings. It appears to be a riding lawnmower. A lawnmower. Yes, sir. And it's being propelled by microwaves. The Overlord's tentacles flailed in disbelief. What kind of madness is this? The officer frantically tapped at the controls, trying to adjust the ship's defenses. It's too late, sir. The object is impacting. Now. With a deafening crash, the lawnmower slammed into the side of the destroyer, knocking out a key power relay. Alarms blared throughout the command center as the massive weapons systems began to fail, one by one. The Overlord stared at the chaos unfolding on the screens, his voice a strained whisper. Defeated. By a lawnmower. On the ground, Todd and the neighbors erupted in cheers as the destroyer began to falter in the sky, its weapons powering down. Bob waved his arms in victory, Christmas lights still flickering from his drone. We did it. We took down the big one. Z-19 could only stare, utterly dumbfounded. Against all odds, these humans had done it. They had defeated the most advanced weapon in the galaxy with trash. Todd turned to Z-19, a triumphant grin on his face. Told, yeah, buddy, never underestimate human ingenuity. Z-19, for the first time since arriving on Earth, allowed themselves a small smile. Perhaps, just perhaps, there was something to this species after all. In the skies above, the destroyer, now powerless and adrift, began to retreat. The Overlord's voice crackled over the communication line, filled with disbelief and defeat. Abort the mission. We cannot defeat them. We must regroup. As the massive ship turned and limped back into the void, Todd stood with his arms crossed, watching it go. "Well," he said, "that was fun. Who's up for burgers?" As the shadow of the destroyer stretched across the sky, blotting out the sun, Todd and Z-19 stood in the driveway, staring up at the massive weapon. The air had a strange, charged quality to it, like the calm before a storm, though Todd didn't seem particularly concerned. "We're gonna need some more junk," Todd said casually, cracking his knuckles as if he were preparing for nothing more than a weekend garage sale. Z-19's eyes flicked between Todd and the approaching alien behemoth. "More junk? That thing is designed to destroy entire planets. It's not some scouting ship or reconnaissance drone. It's the destroyer." Todd shrugged, as if planet-destroying weapons were just a minor inconvenience. "Yeah, well, it's not like we've got anything else to work with, do we?" Bob, Todd's ever-faithful neighbor, came jogging up the driveway, completely out of breath. He doubled over, panting. "Todd, did you?" "Yeah, Bob," Todd said, grinning. "Biggest UFO we've seen yet. Think we've got enough lawnmowers and vacuum cleaners to bring it down?" Bob's face lit up with excitement. "Hell yeah, we do. I've got a couple of old chainsaws we can rig to the roof if you want to go full Mad Max on this thing." Z-19 couldn't help but groan internally. "This is your plan? Old chainsaws and vacuums. You do realize that even if you manage to launch these at the destroyer, it won't." Todd waved a hand dismissively. "Relax, Z. You gotta have a little faith in human ingenuity." Z-19 looked at Todd, baffled by his casual confidence. "Faith." In this, they gestured toward the pile of broken appliances, rusty car parts, and what appeared to be an inflatable pool floaty. Todd grinned and gave a thumbs up. "Yep, that, my friend, is the power of trash." Z-19 resisted the urge to tear their human disguise off in sheer frustration. They had infiltrated hundreds of species, studied some of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy, and yet here they were, standing in a driveway full of junk, preparing to fight the most dangerous weapon known to their people with lawnmowers. Up in orbit, the destroyer loomed closer. The Galactic Council's best minds had designed the weapon to be unstoppable. It was equipped with enough firepower to obliterate planets, moons, and any debris in its path. And it had never been defeated. Not once. Inside the command center, the Overlord watched with grim satisfaction as the massive weapon began to power up, its primary cannon glowing ominously as it aimed toward Earth. "They prepare for full planetary annihilation," the Overlord commanded. "The humans have proven too dangerous to leave unchecked. We'll wipe them out, and their refuse along with them." So one of the officers said hesitantly, "We're detecting some activity on the planet's surface." "Activity?" the Overlord frowned. "What kind of activity?" The officer zoomed in on the sensor readings, and sure enough, several large objects were moving rapidly across the surface, converging near the site where one of their reconnaissance ships had been downed. "It appears the humans are mobilizing some sort of response." The Overlord's eyes narrowed. "What kind of response?" "It's difficult to say," so the officer said, confusion evident in their voice. "It appears to involve household appliances and perhaps a lawnmower." For a moment, the Overlord simply stared at the officer, wondering if he had heard correctly. "A lawnmower?" "Yes, sir." "And possibly garden hoses?" The Overlord rubbed his temples with a tentacle, feeling the onset of another migraine. "This species is infuriating. Prepare to fire on my command." Back on Earth, Todd had rallied the neighbors, and the street was now bustling with activity. People were dragging out old refrigerators, car batteries, and anything else that could be cobbled together into makeshift defenses. It looked less like a military operation and more like the world's weirdest yard sale. Z-19 watched in disbelief as Bob rigged a set of old Christmas lights to a remote control drone. "What exactly are you doing?" Bob grinned. "Electromagnetic disruption. I figured if we can fly this thing close enough to the destroyer, the lights will short out their targeting systems." Z-19 stared at him. "With Christmas lights?" Bob nodded proudly. "Yep, these babies haven't worked since 2012, but they still pack a punch." The alien operative pinched the bridge of their nose. "You do realize how ridiculous this sounds?" Bob shrugged. "Hey, it's either this or nothing, right?" As much as Z-19 wanted to argue, they couldn't deny that the humans had an odd kind of resilience. There was no logic to their methods, no precision. And yet, they had somehow managed to keep the Galactic Council at bay longer than any other species in recorded history. Perhaps there was something to their madness after all. The destroyer continued its slow, menacing approach, now casting an even darker shadow over the town. The air hummed with tension as its massive weaponry powered up, ready to unleash unimaginable destruction. Todd, standing at the center of their makeshift defense zone, wiped his hands on his jeans and surveyed the scene with a satisfied nod. All right, folks, this is it. We've got vacuums, microwaves, and enough duct tape to hold a battleship together. Let's show these aliens what we're made of. Z-19 looked up at the looming weapon in the sky, and then back at the chaotic mess of junk around them. This is insane, they muttered. This is beyond insane. Todd grinned, slapping Z-19 on the back. Welcome to Earth, buddy. We thrive on insane. Inside the destroyer, the Overlord watched as the weapon's main cannon charged to full capacity, its energy signature spiking on the monitors. Prepare to fire, he ordered, his voice dripping with finality. But just as the command was about to be given, a warning light flashed on the console. So one of the officers shouted, "We're detecting a large object approaching the ship at high velocity." The Overlord's eyes widened. "What is it?" The officer squinted at the readings. "It appears to be a riding lawnmower." "A lawnmower?" "Yes, sir. And it's being propelled by microwaves." The Overlord's tentacles flailed in disbelief. What kind of madness is this? The officer frantically tapped at the controls, trying to adjust the ship's defenses. "It's too late, sir. The object is impacting. Now." With a deafening crash, the lawnmower slammed into the side of the destroyer, knocking out a key power relay. Alarms blared throughout the command center as the massive weapons systems began to fail, one by one. The Overlord stared at the chaos unfolding on the screens, his voice a strained whisper, "Defeated by a lawnmower." On the ground, Todd and the neighbors erupted in cheers as the destroyer began to falter in the sky, its weapons powering down. Bob waved his arms in victory, Christmas lights still flickering from his drone. "We did it. We took down the big one." Z-19 could only stare, utterly dumbfounded. Against all odds, these humans had done it. They had defeated the most advanced weapon in the galaxy with trash. Todd turned to Z-19, a triumphant grin on his face. "Told ya, buddy. Never underestimate human ingenuity." Z-19, for the first time since arriving on Earth, allowed themselves a small smile. Perhaps, just perhaps, there was something to this species after all. In the skies above, the destroyer, now powerless and adrift, began to retreat. The Overlord's voice crackled over the communication line, filled with disbelief and defeat. "Abort the mission. We cannot defeat them. We must regroup." As the massive ship turned and limped back into the void, Todd stood with his arms crossed, watching it go. "Well," he said, "that was fun. Who's up for burgers?" On the ground, Todd was grinning ear to ear as the neighbors brought out the last of their supplies. "All right, folks, we've got one more shot at this. Let's make it count." Z-19 looked at the pile of junk and shook their head. "This is insanity." Todd patted Z-19 on the shoulder. "Maybe, but it's our insanity." Night had fallen, casting a calm darkness over the neighborhood, a deceptive calm, given the storm of alien destruction brewing overhead. The sky, still occasionally lit by distant flashes of light from the destroyer's retreat, now carried the faint hum of hundreds of approaching drones, silent and deadly. Todd, however, seemed entirely unbothered by this looming threat. He stood in his driveway, surveying the chaotic collection of junk and scrap metal piled high, a grin plastered across his face. Bob, still buzzing with excitement, was rummaging through an old box of Christmas decorations, pulling out strands of broken lights and defunct holiday inflatables. "Think we could use Santa here as a distraction?" Bob asked, holding up a deflated Santa Claus figure. Todd scratched his chin thoughtfully. "You know, that might actually work. We could rig him with those fireworks we found in the garage." Z-19, standing off to the side, could hardly believe what they were hearing. "Your plan involves exploding Santa Claus." Todd looked up, his grin never faltering. "Why not?" The aliens won't expect it. Z-19 opened their mouth to argue, but then closed it. Arguing with Todd had never worked before, and as ridiculous as it sounded, The humans had a track record of success, no matter how absurd their methods. High above, the Galactic Council's fleet was mobilizing. Hundreds of drones were now streaming out of the flagship, each one programmed with a single mission: strike the key population centers and overwhelm the humans before they had a chance to react. The Overlord watched with grim satisfaction as the drone formation expanded, spreading across Earth's atmosphere like a deadly web. "Are the drones fully armed?" the Overlord asked, his voice a low growl. "Yes, sir," an officer replied. "Each unit is equipped with high-yield explosives. They will strike simultaneously, ensuring maximum destruction." The Overlord nodded. "Good. This time, we will not underestimate them." Begin the countdown. Back on Earth, the hum of the approaching drones was growing louder. Z-19's enhanced senses picked up the distinct vibrations in the air, and they turned toward, a flicker of urgency in their voice. "The drones are coming." "There are hundreds of them." Todd nodded, completely unfazed. "Yeah, I figured they'd try something like that." Z-19's patience was wearing thin. "And you're still sticking with your plan to defeat them with?" They gestured toward the mess of old appliances and rusted lawn equipment. Todd gave them a casual shrug. "Why not? It's worked so far, hasn't it? Luck isn't a strategy, Todd." Todd laughed. "Luck? Who needs luck when you've got a pile of junk and a dream?" Bob, overhearing the conversation, chimed in with a grin. "Plus, I found an old trampoline in the shed. Could be useful for something." Z-19 rubbed their temples, trying to suppress the growing headache. "I'm beginning to wonder if you humans want to be destroyed." Todd slapped Z-19 on the back. "Nah, we just don't take it too seriously. That's the secret to human survival, my friend. When things get tough, we get creative." The first wave of drones broke through the atmosphere, gliding silently toward Earth's surface. Each one was sleek and deadly, equipped with explosives powerful enough to level entire city blocks. As they descended, their targeting systems activated, locking onto their designated targets with cold precision. From the control room of the flagship, the Overlord watched with anticipation. Commence the attack. The drones began their descent. Todd and the neighbors were scrambling now, rushing to finish their last-minute preparations. Someone had rigged a collection of garden hoses into a makeshift water cannon, while another group was busy attaching fireworks to the inflatable Santa, which now stood proudly in the middle of the street, ready to serve as an unlikely decoy. Z-19, for the first time since arriving on Earth, felt genuine fear. They could hear the drones closing in, could feel the subtle shift in the air as the attack approached. "Todd, we don't have time for this. We need to." "Relax," Todd interrupted, crouching down behind an overturned picnic table that had somehow become their makeshift command center. "We've got this." Z-19 wanted to believe him, but as they looked up at the sky and saw the first drones streaking toward them like falling stars, they knew the odds were stacked against them. The first drone swooped down, targeting the neighborhood with chilling precision. But before it could unleash its payload, something unexpected happened. The drone suddenly veered off course, its systems overloaded by a barrage of electromagnetic interference. "Gotcha," Bob shouted, holding up his remote control triumphantly. "Those Christmas lights did the trick." Z-19 blinked. "Christmas lights? You're using Christmas lights to disable drones?" Bob grinned. "Yep. Told ya they'd come in handy." Before Z-19 could process this new layer of absurdity, the second wave of drones appeared on the horizon, their targeting systems rapidly adjusting to the new threat. But Todd was ready. With a triumphant shout, he activated the next phase of their defense, a series of catapults, each loaded with paint cans and firecrackers. "Fire," Todd yelled, and with a series of satisfying twangs, the catapults launched their payloads into the air. The drones, programmed to avoid obstacles, swerved to dodge the incoming barrage, but the paint cans exploded mid-air, coating the drones in a thick, sticky substance that gummed up their sensors. Z-19 watched in disbelief as one by one, the drones began spiraling out of control, crashing into the ground in a series of small explosions. Todd pumped his fist in the air. "We did it. Paint for the win." Z-19, still trying to reconcile the sheer insanity of what they were witnessing, shook their head. This shouldn't be working." Todd shrugged, grinning from ear to ear. "Welcome to Earth." Up on the flagship, the Overlord was livid. "What is happening down there?" An officer frantically checked the monitors. "It appears The drones are being disabled by some sort of primitive countermeasures. The primitive countermeasures, the Overlord bellowed. We are the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. How are they defeating us with paint? The officer winced. It's unclear, sir. The humans seem to be using unconventional tactics. The Overlord slammed a tentacle down on the control panel, sending sparks flying. I don't care what they're using. Deploy the remaining drones. Overwhelm them. Back in the neighborhood, the situation was escalating. More drones were pouring in, and despite the success of their initial defenses, Todd and the neighbors were starting to run out of ammunition, both literal and metaphorical. Z-19's heightened senses could feel the tension mounting as more and more drones appeared on the horizon. We can't keep this up, Z-19 muttered, their voice filled with urgency. There are too many of them. Todd frowned, his confidence wavering for the first time. Yeah, you're probably right. Z-19 turned to face him. Then why aren't we retreating? Why are you still standing here? Todd looked down at the makeshift defenses, then back up at the sky, where the drones were closing in. He gave a small, sad smile. Because it's what we do. Humans, I mean. When we're backed into a corner, we keep fighting, no matter how stupid or impossible it seems. We don't quit. Z-19 stared at him, something shifting inside them. They had spent their entire life serving the Galactic Council, believing that order and logic were the keys to victory. But here, on this strange planet, surrounded by humans and their impossible, reckless bravery, they were beginning to see things differently. Todd said, his voice softer now. We're gonna need your help. Z-19 blinked. What? You're one of them, right? You know their tactics. If anyone can figure out how to stop this, it's you. For a long moment, Z-19 was silent, torn between their duty to the Galactic Council and the strange bond they had formed with these humans. And then, finally, they nodded. All right, Z-19 said, stepping forward. I'll help. As the final wave of drones descended, Z-19 took charge, directing the neighbors in a coordinated defense. Using their knowledge of alien technology, they managed to hack into the drones' targeting systems, disrupting their attacks and buying the humans precious time. One by one, the drones fell from the sky, defeated not by superior firepower or advanced technology, but by the sheer determination of a group of humans and their junkyard defenses. When the last drone crashed into the ground, Todd stood up, dusting off his hands. Well, that was easier than I thought. Z-19 turned to him, their expression unreadable. You're impossible, you know that. Todd grinned. Yeah, I've heard that before. High above, the Overlord's voice crackled through the comms. Z-19, report. What is the status of the mission? Z-19 looked around at the wreckage of the drones, at the humans celebrating their improbable victory. For the first time, they knew exactly what to say. Mission failed, Z-19 said, their voice steady. The humans cannot be defeated. The Overlord's furious roar echoed through the comms, but Z-19 had already switched off their communicator, turning to face Todd and the neighbors with a newfound sense of purpose. Todd raised his beer in a toast. To the power of trash, Z-19 smiled, feeling a strange warmth in their chest. To the power of trash. Up on the Galactic Command ship, the Overlord's chamber was filled with a tense, oppressive silence. The officers dared not move, their eyes flicking nervously between their monitors and their furious leader. Tentacles writhing in frustration, the Overlord glared at the tactical display, showing the wreckage of hundreds of drones scattered across Earth's surface. How is this possible, he growled, his voice a dangerous hiss. How could I be bested by these primitives, these humans? The officers remained silent, none of them brave enough to answer. The Overlord's tentacles clenched, leaving small dents in the metal railing he gripped. We have no choice. If we cannot defeat them with machines, we will defeat them ourselves. There was a collective intake of breath from the officers, so one of the junior commanders stammered, You don't mean? The Overlord's eyes gleamed with cold determination. Prepare the assault shuttle. I will lead the attack personally. Meanwhile, on Earth, the mood had shifted from nervous anticipation to a strange mix of victory and exhaustion. The neighbors, having successfully defended their town from the drones, were now lounging around in Todd's backyard, sipping beers and picking through the leftover scraps of junk they'd used to fight off the aliens. Bob was still tinkering with the now deflated Santa Claus, trying to figure out if it could be repurposed for the next inevitable attack. I think we could fit a firecracker in his hat, he mused. Todd, meanwhile, was leaning back in a lawn chair, hands behind his head, looking up at the stars. Well, that wasn't so bad, he said with a grin. I'm starting to think we might just survive this. Z-19 stood apart from the group, arms crossed, staring out into the night. You shouldn't be so confident, they said quietly. The Galactic Council doesn't give up easily. They will come back. Todd waved a hand dismissively. Yeah. Let him try. We'll just throw another fridge at him. Z-19 turned to face him, their expression serious. No, this time it will be different. The Overlord, he will come himself. Todd raised an eyebrow. The big guy? Seriously? Z-19 nodded. He's desperate. He won't stop until either we are destroyed or he is. Bob looked up from his project, a concerned frown on his face. So what's the plan then? You think your boss is going to show up and just flatten the whole town? That's exactly what he'll do, Z-19 said grimly. He's ruthless. He won't care about collateral damage. He'll destroy this entire planet if he thinks it's the only way to win. Todd sat up in his chair, his grin fading. Okay, that does sound a bit more serious. So, what do we do? Z-19 took a deep breath. We fight. One last time. Hours later, the town was once again a flurry of activity. The neighbors had rallied, bringing out every last scrap of junk they could find. Broken cars were being welded into barricades, microwaves were being rigged with makeshift explosives, and someone had managed to find an old radio tower, which they were now attempting to convert into some sort of EMP generator. Z-19 moved among the group, directing the efforts with newfound confidence. Now that they had fully committed to helping the humans, they could see the method in their madness. Every piece of junk had potential, if used the right way. Todd was busy testing the rig on an old minivan. So, if we strap this engine to the water heater, we should be able to. Stop, Z-19 interrupted, shaking their head. That won't work. But if we rewire the ignition and connect it to the EMP tower, we might be able to create a localized pulse strong enough to disable the Overlord's personal shield. Todd blinked. Wow, you're getting good at this, Z-19 smirked, a rare show of emotion. I've learned from the best. Far above, the Overlord's shuttle had broken through the atmosphere, its sleek, dark form streaking toward the surface like a falling star. Inside, the Overlord sat in silence, his fury coiled like a spring. This was it, the final strike. The humans had humiliated him for the last time. He would see their planet burn before he allowed them to defy him any longer. Please prepare for landing, he commanded, and arm the thermal detonators. The shuttle swooped low, cutting through the clouds as it descended upon the small town. It was a stark contrast to the sprawling, high-tech alien war machines that had attacked before. This shuttle was personal, fast, sleek, and deadly. As it hovered above the town, a ramp extended, and the Overlord himself emerged, his dark, flowing robes rippling in the wind. His many tentacles twitched with barely restrained rage as he surveyed the human defenses, if they could even be called that. Pathetic, he muttered under his breath. Let's see how they fare against me. Todd and the neighbors were ready. The defenses were set, every piece of scrap metal and junk in place, waiting for the final confrontation. Z-19 stood at Todd's side, their alien eyes scanning the sky as the Overlord's shuttle approached. There he is, Z-19 said, their voice tight with tension. It's him. Todd cracked his knuckles. All right, let's give him a warm welcome. As the Overlord touched down, he began to walk toward the makeshift barricade. His towering, alien form cast long shadows across the ground as his dark eyes scanned the humans with contempt. Humans, he called out, his voice booming across the town. You think you can resist me? I am the Overlord of the Galactic Council. I have destroyed worlds, planets far more advanced than yours. And yet, here you stand, defying me with garbage. Todd stepped forward, grinning despite the situation. Hey, it's not just garbage, it's repurposed garbage. The Overlord's eyes narrowed. You mock me. That is a mistake. Before anyone could react, the Overlord raised one of his tentacles, and a massive pulse of energy shot out, striking the nearest barricade and sending debris flying in all directions. The neighbors scrambled for cover as the Overlord unleashed a second wave, destroying another section of the defenses. Z-19 grabbed Todd's arm, pulling him behind a makeshift wall. "We can't fight him head-on. We need to activate the EMP." Todd nodded, already pulling out the remote for the EMP tower. "Let's hope this thing works." The Overlord continued his advance, methodically tearing apart their defenses with ease. It was clear that, for all their efforts, the humans' junkyard creations were no match for his raw power. But just as he raised his tentacle to deliver a final blow, Todd hit the button. The EMP tower whirred to life, emitting a high-pitched hum as the pulse expanded outward. For a moment, everything seemed to freeze. The Overlord's tentacles twitched as the pulse hit him, his personal shield flickering before it shorted out entirely. The Overlord staggered, caught off guard. "What have you done?" Z-19 stepped out from behind the barricade, their eyes locked on the Overlord. "We've leveled the playing field," Todd grinned. "Now it's your turn to deal with some trash." With that, the neighbors sprang into action, hurling everything they had at the Overlord. Old microwaves, broken lawnmowers, even a few flamingos from someone's front yard, all of it came crashing down on the alien leader in a chaotic barrage. The Overlord roared in fury, but without his shield, he was vulnerable. He swatted at the debris, trying to fend off the onslaught, but the sheer volume of junk overwhelmed him. Piece by piece, the defenses wore him down, until he finally collapsed, buried under a pile of broken appliances and deflated inflatables. Todd stood over the wreckage, dusting off his hands. "Well," he said, "I guess that's one way to take out the trash." As the dust settled, Z-19 looked out at the wreckage of the Overlord's once mighty form. The battle was over, and against all odds, humanity had won. The neighbors cheered, clinking their beers together in celebration. Bob was already planning his next project, something involving an old barbecue grill and a chainsaw. Todd turned to Z-19, a grin spreading across his face. "So, what do you think, Z? Still think we're just a bunch of primitives?" Z-19 shook their head, a small smile tugging at the corners of their mouth. "No, I think you're something far more dangerous than that." Todd raised an eyebrow. "Oh yeah? What's that?" Z-19 looked around at the chaotic scene, at the people laughing and celebrating despite everything that had just happened. "You're unpredictable," Todd chuckled. "That's humanity for you." Z-19 nodded, feeling an unfamiliar warmth in their chest. For the first time, they felt like they were part of something. Something wild, chaotic, and utterly impossible to predict. And for the first time, they were okay with that. High above, in the wreckage of the Galactic Command ship, the remnants of the fleet began to scatter, retreating into the far reaches of space. Earth, against all odds, had proven to be unconquerable. As the stars twinkled in the night sky, Todd, Z-19, and the rest of the neighbors stood together, gazing up at the heavens. So Todd said, breaking the silence, "Anyone up for some burgers?" Z-19 smiled. "I could get used to this." The stars above the quiet little town twinkled brighter than they had in weeks. With the Galactic Command ship in retreat and the Overlord buried under a pile of junk, the night sky seemed calmer, more peaceful. The threat of intergalactic destruction had passed, at least for now. Todd stood in the middle of the street, flipping burgers on a rusted old grill he'd dragged out of the garage. A few of the neighbors were setting up folding chairs, while Bob had already cracked open another beer. The remnants of the improvised defenses were scattered across the lawn, but no one seemed too worried about cleaning up just yet. Z-19 sat at one of the picnic tables, watching the scene with a kind of quiet amazement. The humans, despite having just survived an alien invasion, were acting like it was just another day in the neighborhood. Todd waved from the grill. "Hey Z, you want a burger?" "They're almost done." Z-19 blinked, still adjusting to the strange customs of Earth. "I suppose I could try one." Attaboy Todd flipped a patty onto a bun and handed it over with a grin. "You've earned it." Z-19 took the burger, staring at it for a moment before taking a cautious bite. The flavor was interesting. Not unpleasant, just different. "It's good," they said, still a little unsure of how to process this new experience. Todd grinned. "See? Told you Earth wasn't so bad." Z-19 nodded, gazing out at the peaceful scene. It was strange, but in a way this chaotic, unpredictable place had started to feel like home. The humans were reckless, impulsive, and entirely too relaxed for a species that had just fought off an alien armada. but they were also resourceful, brave, and against all odds, successful. Z-19 had never encountered anything like it in all their time with the Galactic Council. And maybe that was exactly why they'd decided to stay. Bob wandered over, a beer in hand. "So Z, what's the plan now? You sticking around? I mean, you seem pretty handy with alien tech. Could always use an extra pair of hands for the next project." Z-19 glanced at Todd, who was busy flipping another burger while explaining the finer points of engine repair to a curious neighbor. "I think I will stay," they said quietly. "Earth is more interesting than I expected." Bob raised his beer in a toast. To Earth, and to beating the crap out of a bunch of aliens with lawnmowers. Z-19 smiled faintly. To Earth, far above, the remnants of the Galactic Command ship had scattered into the depths of space. The Overlord, humiliated and defeated, would not soon forget the lesson he had learned on Earth. The Galactic Council's most advanced weapons, tactics, and technology had all been undone by a group of humans armed with nothing more than garbage and determination. As the fleet limped away, the Overlord sat in the command chamber, silent and seething. His tentacles twitched with fury, but there was nothing left to be done. Earth had proven unconquerable, so one of the officers ventured nervously, "Should we report this failure to the Council?" The Overlord's voice was a low, dangerous growl. "No, we will say nothing. The Council does not need to know that we were defeated by trash." The officer nodded, wisely choosing to remain silent. The Overlord turned to the display, where the image of Earth still lingered on the screen. For now, the humans had won. But the Overlord knew one thing for certain: he would never underestimate them again. Back on Earth, the victory celebration was in full swing. The neighbors had gathered around the grill, laughing and toasting their improbable success. Someone had even dragged out a karaoke machine, and Bob was in the middle of a surprisingly heartfelt rendition of Eye of the Tiger. Z-19, still seated at the picnic table, watched the scene unfold with a quiet sense of contentment. For the first time in their life, they felt at ease. No mission, no orders, no Galactic Council breathing down their neck. Just the simple, chaotic beauty of life on Earth. Todd wandered over, a beer in one hand and a burger in the other. He plopped down next to Z-19, grinning as usual. "So Z, what's next for you? Sticking around or heading back to your home planet?" Z-19 thought about it for a moment, then shook their head. "I think I'll stay." Todd raised an eyebrow. "Yeah? You sure? I mean, it's not like we've got space stations and starships here." Z-19 smiled softly. "No, but you have something far more valuable." Todd blinked. "Oh yeah? What's that?" Z-19 looked out at the crowd of humans, laughing, singing, and celebrating their victory. "You have unpredictability." Todd chuckled. "Yeah, I guess we do. So, you're saying you've officially gone rogue? No more Galactic Council, no more alien overlords?" Z-19 nodded. "I am no longer part of the Council. My mission is over." Todd raised his beer in a toast. "Well, in that case, welcome to Earth, Z. You're one of us now." Z-19 clinked their bottle against Todd's, feeling a warmth they hadn't felt before. It wasn't just the victory or the strange human food. It was the sense of belonging, a feeling they'd never had back with the Council. "To Earth," Z-19 said softly. Todd grinned. "To Earth. And to kicking some alien butt." As the night wore on, the stars twinkled above, and the town settled into a peaceful, well-earned rest. The threat of the Galactic Council had passed, at least for now, and life on Earth would return to its usual chaotic rhythm. But somewhere, out in the vastness of space, the galaxy would remember this day, the day when a small, insignificant planet called Earth had stood its ground against the most powerful force in the universe. And won. And as Z-19 looked up at the night sky, surrounded by their newfound human friends, they knew one thing for certain: Earth was unpredictable, chaotic, and entirely unlike any other place in the galaxy. And that was exactly why they belonged here.